Danny woke up 3 days later in his own bed. The sunlight was streaming through the window, warm and golden. For a moment, he did not remember what had happened. Then the pain in his chest reminded him, a dull ache where the cat had cut him open. He turned his head and saw Venna sitting in a chair beside his bed. She was asleep, her head resting on her arms, her breathing slow and steady. She had not left his side since the fight. Danny could tell by the circles under her large dark eyes at the foot of the bed. Pick was curled up like a cat, her small body rising and falling with each breath. She was clutching Danny's hand even in her sleep, as if she was afraid he would disappear if she let go. I was in the corner of the room, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. She was awake and watching him with quiet relief in her eyes. When she saw that Danny was conscious, she smiled and put a finger to her lips. "Let them sleep," the gesture said. They needed. Danny nodded slightly and closed his eyes again. He was alive. His girls were safe. For now, that was enough. The peace lasted 2 more days. Then the black SUVs returned, and this time there were a lot more of them. Danny was sitting on his porch when they arrived. He had recovered enough to move around, though his chest still hurt when he breathed too deeply. Venna was beside him, watching the convoy of vehicles with fear in her eyes. They both knew that this time there would be no lying their way out. Agent Webb stepped out of the lead vehicle. She was not alone. Behind her were soldiers in tactical gear, scientists in white coats, and officials in expensive suits. This was not a casual visit. This was an operation. Mr. Cole, Agent Webb said as she approached the porch. "We detected some very unusual energy signatures from your property 3 nights ago. The same kind of energy signatures we have been tracking for months. Would you like to explain what happened here?" Danny looked at the bodies of the cat, which were still lying in his yard, covered by tarps he had found in the garage. He looked at Venna, who was trembling beside him. He looked at the army of people who had come to take his family away. He made a decision. The same kind of decision he had made on that first night, when 3 starving alien girls appeared on his porch. The kind of decision that came from his heart rather than his head. He stood up and faced Agent Webb directly. "Before I tell you anything, I need your word. Your personal word that no harm will come to the 3 girls who are living with me. They are children, refugees, survivors. They have done nothing wrong, and I will not let them be treated like prisoners or experiments." Agent Webb studied him for a long moment. Behind her, the soldiers shifted nervously. They had come prepared for many things, but not for a tired mechanic from Kansas making demands. "You are in no position to negotiate." "Mr. Cole," Agent Webb said carefully. "Maybe not." Danny crossed his arms, ignoring the pain in his chest. "But those girls saved my life. And before that, I saved theirs. We are family now, whether you understand that or not. So you can shoot me or arrest me or do whatever you want. But I am not saying a word until I have your promise." The silence stretched out. Then Agent Webb did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a short laugh, surprised rather than amused, but it was real. "You have a lot of nerve, Mr. Cole," she said. "I respect that. Fine. You have my word. The girls will not be harmed." Danny nodded. Then he called into the house. "Girls, come on out. It is time." Venna emerged first, standing tall despite her fear. Sori came next, holding Pick's hand. The 3 alien girls walked onto the porch and stood beside Danny, their eyes wide as they looked at the crowd of humans staring back at them. For a moment, nobody moved. The soldiers gripped their weapons. The scientists whispered to each other. The officials looked like they were trying to calculate the political implications of what they were seeing. Then Pick, who had never been good at staying quiet, looked up at Agent Webb and smiled. "Hello," she said in her best English. "My name is Pick. Danny is my dad now." Do you want a cookie? Agent Webb blinked. She opened her mouth, closed it, and opened it again. Danny had to fight back a smile. It was hard to see alien children as a threat when one of them was offering you cookies. The next few hours were chaotic. The Keth bodies were taken away for study. The girls were examined by doctors who were clearly not prepared to examine alien physiology. Danny was questioned again and again about everything that had happened since that first night on his porch. Through it all, Danny stayed with the girls. He refused to let them be separated from him, and surprisingly, the authorities let him. Maybe they understood that the girls were more cooperative when Danny was around. Or maybe Agent Webb remembered her promise. Finally, as the sun was setting, Agent Webb came to talk to Danny alone. They sat on his porch, the same porch where everything had started, and watched the last of the vehicles drive away. "We are going to need a lot more information from you and the girls," she said. "About the Nethari, about the Keth, about everything. This is going to change the world, Mr. Cole. You understand that?" Danny nodded. "I understand." But Agent Webb continued, looking at him with something like curiosity. "We are not going to take the girls away from you. We will monitor the situation. We will send people to check in regularly. But they can stay here with you under certain conditions." Danny felt a weight lift from his chest that had nothing to do with his healing wound. "Why?" he asked. "I expected you to drag them off to some government facility." Agent Webb smiled slightly. "Honestly, so did I, but after talking to my superiors, the decision came back that the girls should stay with you. Apparently, someone very high up was impressed by your story." "What story?" Agent Webb stood up and straightened her jacket. "The story of a lonely man who left food on his porch for strays, who took in 3 alien children because they were hungry and scared, who fought to protect them even when he had no chance of winning." She looked at Danny with respect in her sharp eyes. "We have been preparing for first contact for decades. We always assumed it would happen with ships and diplomacy and threats. We never considered that it might happen in a backyard in Kansas with a man who just wanted to help. Danny did not know what to say. So he said nothing. Agent Webb walked to her SUV, then stopped and turned back. "One more thing, Mr. Cole. The colonel who made the final decision about the girls wanted me to give you a message." "What message?" Agent Webb smiled. "She said that humanity is lucky to have people like you representing us for first contact. She said that if there are more aliens out there watching to see what humans are like, she hopes they see you first." Then she got in her vehicle and drove away, leaving Danny alone on his porch. The girls came outside a few minutes later. Pick immediately climbed onto Danny's lap, even though she was getting too big for that. Sori sat beside him and leaned against his shoulder. Venna stood behind him with her hands on his shoulders, looking up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Are they going to take us away?" Pick asked in a small voice. "No," Danny said. "Nobody is going to take you anywhere. This is your home." Venna squeezed his shoulders. "Among the Nethari," she said softly, "there is no word for someone who helps strangers without expecting anything in return. You told me that before," Danny said. "The first night you came inside. Yes. But now there is a word." Venna leaned down and pressed her forehead against the top of Danny's head, a Nethari gesture of deep affection. "Now we call it being a Danny." Danny laughed. It was the first real laugh he had had in years, maybe since before Emma died. It felt good. It felt like coming home. Above them, the stars shone bright and cold, full of mysteries and dangers and wonders that humanity was only beginning to understand. Out there somewhere were more Keth, more Nethari, more species that humans had never imagined. The universe was vast and strange, and sometimes terrifying. But right here, on this porch in this quiet town in Kansas, none of that mattered. Right here, there was a man and 3 girls who had found each other when they needed each other most. Right here, there was a family. Pick looked up at the stars and pointed. One day, she said, "I want to show you where I came from." Danny hugged her tighter. "One day," he promised. "One day, we will go see the purple skies and silver oceans." Together, the four of them sat on the porch as night fell, watching the stars come out one by one, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together, because that is what family does. The Keth had not forgotten Dodd. It had taken them months to find the trail. The colony ship's crash had scattered debris across a wide area, and the planet's strange atmosphere interfered with their tracking equipment. But the Keth were patient hunters. They had hunted the Nithari across 3 star systems already. A few months of searching on this primitive world was nothing. The scout ship entered Earth's atmosphere on a cold November night, sliding through the clouds without making a sound. The ship was small, built for stealth rather than comfort. Inside were 3 Keth warriors, each one standing 8 feet tall with hard black shells and limbs that ended in blades sharp enough to cut through steel. They had one mission: find the surviving Nithari and eliminate them. The Keth leader tracked the faint energy signature to a rural area in the middle of the continent. 3 Netheri life signs, young ones based on the readings. No adults. Easy prey. The ship landed in the dense forest a few miles from a small human settlement and powered down. The hunters began their hunt. Venna woke up in the middle of the night, with her heart pounding. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones, the way her people could sometimes feel danger approaching. It was an old instinct, something from before the Nithari had built cities and ships and spread across the stars. An instinct that had kept them alive when predators stalked them on their home world. She got out of bed and went to the window. The night was dark and quiet. The stars were hidden behind clouds. Everything looked normal, but Venna knew it was not. She ran to Danny's room and shook him awake. Her hands were trembling. "Danny," she whispered. "Danny, wake up. They are here." Danny sat up immediately. He had learned to trust Venna's instincts over the past months. "What is here?" he asked. The Keth. Venna's voice was tight with fear. "I can feel them. They have found us." Danny got out of bed and went to his closet. He pushed aside old clothes and boxes until he found what he was looking for. His father's hunting rifle, a lever-action .30-30 that he had not fired in years. Next to it was a box of ammunition. He loaded the rifle with hands that were steady despite the fear in his chest. "Wake your sisters," he told Venna. "Get them dressed and bring them to the basement. I'm going to take a look outside." Venna grabbed his arm. "You cannot fight the Keth. They are warriors. They have killed hundreds of my people." Danny looked at her with calm eyes. "Maybe I cannot stop them, but I can slow them down. I can give you time to run if it comes to that. Now go get your sisters." Venna wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in Danny's face. She nodded and ran to wake Pick and Sori. Danny moved through his dark house without turning on any lights. He knew every corner and every floorboard of this place. He had lived here for 10 years, long enough to walk through it blindfolded. He went to the kitchen and looked out the window toward the tree line behind his property. At first, he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved at the edge of the woods. A shadow that was too tall and too sharp to be human. Then another shadow. Then a third. Danny's blood went cold. He could see them now. 3 dark shapes moving through the trees with terrible grace. They were hunting, spreading out to surround the house. They moved like predators who knew their prey was trapped. Danny had about 5 minutes before they reached the house. Maybe less. He made a decision. He went to his garage and grabbed supplies. Wire, rope, gasoline, tools, anything that could be useful. He worked fast, setting up traps around his property, using everything he knew about hunting and mechanics. He stretched wire at knee height between trees. He poured gasoline in a line at the edge of the yard. He positioned heavy objects on unstable supports where they would fall if triggered. It was not much. It would not stop the Keth for long, but it might give the girls a few extra seconds. And right now, every second mattered. He was finishing his last trap when the first Keth burst out of the tree line. The creature was terrifying up close. 8 feet of black shell and bladed limbs, with eyes that glowed faintly red in the darkness. It moved faster than Danny had expected, crossing the yard in 3 huge strides. It did not see the wire until it was too late. The Keth hit the wire and stumbled. It did not fall. The creature was too strong for that, but it lost its balance for a moment. That moment was all Danny needed. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet hit the Keth in the shoulder joint where the shell was thinner. The creature screamed, a horrible high-pitched sound that hurt Danny's ears. It staggered but did not go down. Danny fired again. This time, he hit it in the head. The Keth collapsed and did not move. 1 down. 2 to go. Danny did not have time to celebrate. The second Keth came at him from the side, drawn by the gunshots. This one had seen the wire and jumped over it. Danny turned to fire, but the creature was too fast. A bladed limb slashed across his chest, cutting through his jacket and shirt and skin like they were made of paper. Danny fell backward, pain exploding through his body. He could feel blood soaking into his clothes. The wound was bad, maybe fatal, but he raised his rifle with shaking hands and fired again. The shot went wide, missing the Keth completely. The creature stood over him, its red eyes glowing with what might have been satisfaction. It raised its bladed limb for the killing strike. Then a beam of blue light hit the Keth from behind. The creature screamed and twisted around. Standing on the back porch was Venna, holding a strange device that glowed with blue energy. Danny recognized it. She had told him about it once, a piece of Nathari technology she had salvaged from the escape pod. She called it a pulse weapon. She had never used it because she was afraid it would attract attention. She was not afraid anymore. Venna fired again. The blue beam hit the Keth in the chest and sent it flying backward. The creature crashed into a tree and did not get up. The third Keth emerged from the darkness behind Venna. Danny tried to shout a warning, but his voice came out as a weak croak. The creature was going to reach her before she could turn around. Then Sori was there. She had followed her sister outside, carrying a heavy wrench from Danny's garage. She swung it with all her strength and hit the Keth in the leg joint. The creature stumbled, surprised by the attack. Venna spun around and fired her pulse weapon one more time. The third Keth fell silence. The battle was over. 3 Keth warriors lay dead on Danny's property, killed by a human with an old rifle and 2 teenage aliens with borrowed courage. Venna dropped the pulse weapon and ran to Danny. He was lying on the ground, pressing his hands against the wound on his chest. Blood was seeping through his fingers. His face was pale and his breathing was shallow. Danny, Venna said, her voice breaking. No. You cannot die. Please do not die. SOR. I ran inside and came back with pick and blankets and the first aid kit from the bathroom. Venna's hands were shaking too much to be useful, so Sori took over. She had always been the calm one. She pressed clean cloth against Danny's wound and applied pressure while Pick held his hand and cried, It is too deep. Sori said, Human medicine cannot fix this. He needs Nethery healing technology. We do not have any, Venna said desperately. Everything was destroyed in the crash. Sori was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at her sister with determination in her eyes. The escape pod had a medical unit. A small one. I took it when we left. I have been carrying it this whole time, just in case. You never told me. Venna said, I did not think we would ever need it. Sori pulled a small device from her pocket. It was barely larger than a human cell phone, and it only has enough power for one use. Lena did not hesitate. Use it. Use it now. Sori activated the device and held it over Danny's wound. A soft green light spread across his chest. Danny gasped as the light touched him. The pain faded. The bleeding slowed. The wound began to close, not completely but enough. Enough to stop the bleeding. Enough to save his life. The device flickered and went dark. Its power was gone. Sori dropped it and put her hands on Danny's chest. His heartbeat was steady. His breathing was getting stronger. He was going to live. Vena sat back and let herself cry. Pick was still holding Danny's hand, refusing to let go. Sori stayed calm, but her eyes were wet too. On the ground around them, the bodies of the Keth lay cooling in the night air. The hunt was over. The hunters had become the hunted, and they had lost. Danny opened his eyes and looked up at the 3 alien girls who had just saved his life. He tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. I guess we are even now, he whispered. Venm, a laugh through her tears. No, she said. We are family. Family does not keep score. 2 months passed, and the girls began to feel like family. Pick had transformed from a starving, frightened child into a bundle of energy who ran through the house laughing and playing. She had learned enough English to ask for things and to tell simple jokes that made no sense but were funny anyway, because of how proud she looked when she told them. Her favorite word was cookie because Danny gave her one every night before bed. Sori was quieter than her little sister, but just as curious. She had fallen in love with human music. Danny's old radio became her most treasured possession. She would sit beside it for hours, turning the dial slowly, stopping whenever she found a song she liked. Country music, rock and roll, classical, it did not matter to her. She loved it all. Sometimes, Danny would hear her singing along in her own language. Making up words to match the melody. Venna was the one who surprised Danny the most. She was serious and careful, always watching, always learning. But underneath that cautious exterior was a sharp mind and a natural talent that Danny had not expected. She started helping him in his garage, watching him work on engines and asking questions with her improving English. Within weeks, she understood how human machines worked better than some of his apprentices over the years. She told him that her father had been an engineer on the colony ship. He had taught her about machines and systems before she could even walk. Machines are the same everywhere, she said one evening while helping Danny replace a transmission. Different shapes, different parts, but same ideas. Same logic. My father would have liked your machines. They are simple but clever. Danny smiled at that. Simple but clever. That was probably the best compliment anyone had ever given to human engineering. Life fell into a comfortable routine. Danny went to work during the day, while the girls stayed hidden in the house. He had explained to them that humans were not ready to know about aliens yet. If someone saw them, there would be panic. Soldiers would come. Scientists would come. The girls understood and stayed inside with the curtains drawn. In the evenings, Danny would come home and cook dinner for his new family. He taught the girls how to set the table and wash dishes. He taught them how to read English using children's books from the library. He taught them how to play card games and board games, though Venna always won because she was better at strategy than he was. On weekends, they would go outside after dark. Danny would take them to the field behind his house where they could see the stars without any light pollution. Pick loved these nights. She would lie on her back in the grass and point at the sky, trying to find the star that her home planet orbited. She never found it. The galaxy was too big, and her star was too far away. But she never stopped looking. One Saturday afternoon, Danny was working in his garage with Venna when a black SUV pulled into his driveway. His heart immediately began to pound. Nobody drove SUVs in Miller Creek. Nobody except people who did not belong here. Two people got out of the vehicle. A man and a woman, both wearing dark suits and serious expressions. They looked like government agents from the movies, which probably meant they were government agents in real life. Danny wiped his hands on a rag and walked out to meet them, making sure to close the garage door behind him so they could not see Venna hiding inside. "Good afternoon," the woman said. She had short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. "I am Agent Carol Webb. This is Agent Luis Vega. We are with a department that investigates unusual events. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Danny kept his face calm, even though his heart was racing. "Sure. What kind of unusual events?" Agent Vega pulled out a tablet computer and showed Danny a map. There were colored dots scattered across the map, concentrated in the mountains about 50 miles from Miller Creek. "We have detected some unusual energy signatures in this area over the past few months," he said. "Very unusual. The kind of signatures that do not come from any known human technology." Danny looked at the map and shrugged. "I would not know anything about that. I just fix cars." Agent Webb smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "We are asking everyone in the area. Have you noticed anything strange lately? Unusual lights in the sky? Sounds you cannot explain? Anything at all that seemed out of the ordinary?" Danny thought about 3 alien girls living in his house. He thought about the crashed colony ship somewhere in the mountains. He thought about the Keth, who might still be hunting for survivors. He looked Agent Webb in the eyes and shook his head. "Nothing strange here," he said. "Just a quiet life in a quiet town." Agent Webb studied him for a long moment. Danny could feel her suspicion, but he kept his expression neutral. He had never been good at lying before. He had always been too honest for his own good. But now he had something worth lying for. Finally, Agent Webb nodded. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a business card. "If you remember anything, please give us a call. Day or night. This is important, Mr. Cole. More important than you might realize." Danny took the card and put it in his pocket. "I will keep that in mind." The agents got back in their SUV and drove away. Danny watched until they were out of sight. Then he went back into the garage. Venna was hiding behind his tool cabinet, her dark eyes wide with fear. "They are looking for us," she whispered. "They know we are here. They do not know anything," Danny said. "They just know something crashed in the mountains. They do not know about you, but they will find out." Venna's voice was shaking. "They will keep looking, and they will find us, and they will take us away from you. We should leave. We should run. We are putting you in danger just by being here." Danny knelt down so he was at eye level with her. He put his hands on her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Listen to me," he said. "You are not going anywhere. This is your home now. You and your sisters are my family. And family does not abandon family. Do you understand?" Venna stared at him. "Among my people," she said slowly, "family bonds are sacred. The most sacred thing. But you are not Nathari. You are human. Why would you call us family?" Danny thought about that question. He thought about Emma and the family they had planned to have together before she was taken from him. He thought about the empty years after she died, when he had nothing to live for except feeding strays on his back porch. "Because family is not about blood," he said finally. "Family is about choice. I choose you 3. I choose to protect you and take care of you and help you grow up safe and happy. That makes you my family. It is as simple as that." Venna's large dark eyes filled with tears. Among the Nathari, crying was not considered weak or shameful. It was considered honest. And right now, Venna was being more honest than she had been since the day she lost her parents. "I did not think I would ever have a family again," she whispered. After the crash, after we lost everyone, I thought we were alone forever. I thought we would die alone on this strange planet. Danny pulled her into a hug. She stiffened at first because physical affection was different among the Nathari. But then she relaxed and hugged him back, her thin arms wrapping around him tightly. "You are not alone," Danny said. "You will never be alone again. I promise you that." From the doorway of the garage, Pick and Sori watched. They had heard the SUV and come to see what was happening. Now, they saw their sister crying in the arms of the human who had saved them, and they understood that something important had just changed. Pick ran forward and joined the hug. Sori followed a moment later. The four of them stood there in the dusty garage, holding each other, a human and three aliens who had somehow become a family. Outside, the sun was setting over Kansas. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors that reminded the girls of home. But this was home now. This small house in this quiet town with this kind man who fed strays and asked for nothing in return. This was home. The three alien girls came back the next night, and the night after that. Danny made sure there was always food waiting for them. He started cooking more than he needed for dinner, so he could leave the extra on the porch. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, bread with butter. He had no idea what their species could eat, but they seemed to handle human food just fine. On the fourth night, Danny left the back door open. Not all the way, just enough to show that they were welcome inside if they wanted. The two younger ones looked at the open door with curiosity, but the tall one shook her head and kept them on the porch. She still did not trust him completely. Danny understood. Trust took time. On the seventh night, it rained. A cold autumn rain that soaked everything and dropped the temperature by 20 degrees. Danny watched from his kitchen window as the three girls huddled together on his porch, shivering and wet. The youngest one was crying, making small sounds that broke Danny's heart. He walked to the back door and opened it wide. Then he stepped aside and pointed inside, toward the warm kitchen with its bright lights and dry floor. The tall one hesitated. Danny could see her thinking, weighing the risks against the cold rain soaking through her clothes. The youngest one made the decision for her. She broke away from the group and ran inside, her bare feet slapping against the kitchen floor. She stood there dripping water, looking around at Danny's house with wide, amazed eyes. The middle one followed a moment later. The tall one was the last to enter. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning everything, looking for danger. Danny closed the door behind her and locked it. The tall one flinched at the sound of the lock, and Danny immediately unlocked it again. He wanted her to know she could leave whenever she wanted. She was not a prisoner here. Danny gave them towels to dry off. He showed them the bathroom and how to use the shower. He found some of Emma's old clothes in the closet, things he had never been able to throw away, and laid them out on the guest bed. The clothes were too big, but they were clean and warm. While the girls took turns showering, Danny made hot soup on the stove. Chicken noodle, from a can because he had never learned to make it from scratch. When the girls came out of the bathroom, wearing Emma's old sweaters and sweatpants with the legs rolled up, Danny set bowls of soup in front of them at the kitchen table. They ate in silence. Danny sat across from them, not eating, just watching. The youngest one finished her soup and looked at him with eyes that were starting to lose their fear. She pointed at herself and made a sound. Pick. She pointed at herself again. Pick. Danny understood. It was her name. He pointed at her and repeated the sound. Pick. She smiled, showing small teeth that were sharper than human teeth, but not scary. Just different. The middle one went next. She pointed at herself and said, "Sorry." Danny repeated it. "Sorry." She nodded and went back to her soup. The tall one waited until her sisters were done before she spoke. Her voice was quiet and careful. "Vanna," she said, pointing at herself. Then she pointed at Danny and raised what would have been her eyebrows if her species had eyebrows. Danny pointed at himself. "Danny," he said. "My name is Danny." Venna tried to repeat it. "Danny." It came out a little wrong, but close enough. Danny nodded and smiled. Venna did not smile back, but some of the tension left her shoulders. A name was a start. Names meant something. Over the next few weeks, Danny learned more about his guests. It was slow going at first. They did not speak any human language, and Danny certainly did not speak whatever language they used. But they found ways to communicate. Pointing at things, drawing pictures, acting out stories with hand gestures and facial expressions. The girls were a Netheri. That was what they called their species. They came from a planet far away, a world with purple skies and silver oceans that Danny could only imagine. They had been on a colony ship, traveling to start a new settlement on a distant planet. There were hundreds of Nethari on that ship. Families, children, workers, soldiers. Everything they needed to build a new home. Then the Keth attacked. Venna drew pictures of the Keth with a pencil Danny gave her. Tall creatures with hard shells and too many limbs. Hunters, she explained through gestures. Killers. The Keth had followed the colony ship for weeks before they struck. When they finally attacked, it was a massacre. The Netheri were not warriors. They had some weapons, some defenses, but nothing that could stop the Keth. The colony ship crashed on Earth. Venna did not know exactly where. Somewhere in the mountains, she thought. She and her sisters had survived because their parents had hidden them in an escape pod before the final attack. Their parents did not survive. For weeks, the three girls had wandered through the wilderness. They ate berries and roots and anything they could find. They hid from the strange creatures on this strange planet. They did not know if the Keth were still hunting them. They did not know if any other Nethari had survived. They were alone and scared and slowly starving. Then Venna found Danny's house. She smelled the food on the porch and watched from the woods for 3 nights before she was desperate enough to approach. She expected a trap. She expected to be captured or killed. Instead, she found a quiet man who fed them without asking for anything in return. Danny listened to their story and felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Purpose. These 3 girls had lost everything, just like he had. They were alone in a world they did not understand, just like he had felt after Emma died. But unlike Danny, they were children. They needed help. They needed someone to take care of them. Danny looked at Pick, who had started sitting next to him on the couch while he watched television. He looked at Sori, who had discovered his old radio and spent hours listening to music with her eyes closed. He looked at Venna, who watched everything he did with careful attention, learning, adapting, trying to understand this human who had taken them in. He could report them to the authorities. He knew he probably should. First contact with alien life was something the whole world needed to know about. Scientists would want to study them. Governments would want to question them. The girls would be taken away to some facility where people in white coats would poke and prod them while asking endless questions. Danny thought about that. He thought about the fear that would come back into their eyes. He thought about Pick, who had just started laughing again. He thought about separating them, putting them in different rooms, treating them like specimens instead of children. No, he would not do that to them. He could not do that to them. Danny made his decision. He would keep them hidden. He would protect them. He would raise them as his own if that was what it took. They had already lost one family. He would not let them lose another. That night, he moved the girls into the guest bedroom permanently. He set up 3 beds using mattresses from the garage and blankets from the closet. Pick bounced on her bed with delight. Sori arranged her blankets carefully, making a little nest for herself. Venna just stood in the doorway, looking at Danny with an expression he could not quite read. "Thank you," she said. The words were slow and careful, learned from weeks of listening to Danny talk. "Thank you, Danny." Danny nodded. He did not trust his voice right then. He just nodded and closed the door softly behind him. For the first time in 3 years, his house did not feel empty. Danny Cole lived alone in a small house at the edge of Miller Creek, a quiet town in Kansas where nothing much ever happened. He was 34 years old and worked as a mechanic at the only garage in town. He fixed cars and trucks and tractors, and he was good at his job. People liked him because he was honest and kind, even if he did not talk much anymore. 3 years ago, his wife Emma died in a car accident on the highway during a winter storm. After that, something broke inside Danny. He still went to work. He still paid his bills. He still waved at his neighbors when he saw them. But the light in his eyes had gone out, and everyone in town knew it. The only thing that gave him any comfort was feeding the strays. It started a few months after Emma passed. A skinny orange cat showed up on his back porch one evening, meowing for food. Danny gave it some leftover chicken, and the cat came back the next night. Then a stray dog appeared, a mutt with brown fur and sad eyes. Danny fed that one too. Soon, it became a ritual. Every night before bed, Danny would put out bowls of food and water on his back porch. Cats, dogs, raccoons, possums, it did not matter to him. If something was hungry, he would feed it. Emma had always said he had a soft heart. She used to tease him about it. Now feeding strays was his way of keeping that soft heart alive. One Thursday evening in late September, Danny noticed something strange. He had put out food the night before, the usual mix of dry kibble and some cooked meat. When he checked the bowls in the morning, they were completely empty. That was not unusual. But there were marks in the soft mud near the porch that he had never seen before. At first, he thought they were animal tracks. But when he looked closer, they seemed almost like footprints. Human footprints, but wrong somehow. The toes were too long and thin. The shape was too narrow. Danny stood there for a long time, staring at the mud, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He told himself it was probably just some weird animal track he had never noticed before. Maybe a large bird or something. He cleaned up the bowls, went to work, and tried to forget about it. But that night, he put out extra food, just in case. The next morning, the bowls were empty again, and there were more of those strange footprints, this time leading from the edge of the woods behind his property all the way to the porch and back again. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. Something was coming to his house at night. Something that walked on 2 legs, but was not human. He decided to stay up and watch. He turned off all the lights in his house, except for the small lamp in his kitchen. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking out the window at the back porch. The porch light was off too. He wanted to see what was out there without scaring it away. The hours passed slowly. Danny drank his coffee and listened to the sounds of the night. Crickets chirping, an owl hooting somewhere in the distance, the wind rustling through the trees. He started to feel foolish. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe the footprints were just some trick of the mud and his tired eyes. Then, just after midnight, he saw movement at the edge of the woods. 3 small figures emerged from the darkness. They moved slowly and carefully, like animals approaching a trap. Danny held his breath and watched. The figures came closer, and he could see them more clearly now in the faint moonlight. They were not human. Their skin was a pale blue-gray color, smooth and almost shiny. Their eyes were large and dark, taking up much of their faces. They had thin bodies and long limbs, and they wore clothing that looked torn and dirty, like uniforms that had been through something terrible. Danny's heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Aliens. They were aliens. Real aliens, right there in his backyard. He should call someone. The police, the military, the news. This was the biggest discovery in human history, and it was happening on his back porch in Kansas. But then the smallest figure stepped into a patch of moonlight, and Danny saw her face clearly. She was young, very young, just a child, with wide, frightened eyes and ribs showing through her torn clothing. She was looking at the food bowls with a hunger that Danny recognized. It was the same look the stray cats had when they first showed up at his door. The look of something that had not eaten in days. The small one moved toward the food, but the tallest figure grabbed her arm and held her back. The tall one was scanning the area, looking for danger. She was protecting the others, Danny realized. She was the oldest, probably a teenager in whatever years her species used. She was trying to keep the young ones safe. Danny made a decision without really thinking about it. He stood up from the kitchen table and walked to the back door. He could see the three figures freeze when they heard him moving inside the house. The tall one pulled the other two behind her, ready to run. Danny opened the door slowly. He did not turn on the porch light. He did not want to scare them. He just stood there in the doorway, letting them see him. Then he stepped to the side and pointed at the food bowls. For a long moment, nobody moved. The three alien girls stared at Danny. Danny stared back at them. The night was silent, except for the sound of wind in the trees. Then the smallest one broke free from the tall one's grip and ran to the food bowls. She grabbed handfuls of kibble and shoved them into her mouth, eating so fast that she nearly choked. The middle one followed a moment later, falling to her knees beside the bowls and eating just as desperately. The tall one did not move. She stood at the edge of the porch, watching Danny with those large, dark eyes. There was fear in her eyes, but also something else. Confusion, maybe. She did not understand why this human was helping them. Danny went back inside and opened his refrigerator. He found some leftover roast beef from dinner, a loaf of bread, and some apples. He brought them outside and set them down near the food bowls. The two young ones looked up at him with wonder. The tall one still had not moved. Danny pointed at the food, then at the three girls, then at his own mouth in a chewing motion. "Eat," he was trying to say. "It is for you. Eat." The tall one finally moved. She walked slowly to where Danny had placed the food, never taking her eyes off him. She picked up a piece of roast beef and smelled it. Then she took a small bite. Her eyes widened, and she began eating faster. Danny watched them eat. Three alien children, starving and scared, sitting on his back porch in the middle of the night. He had no idea where they came from or how they got here. He had no idea what he was supposed to do. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, they were hungry, and he had food. That was enough for tonight.